Before anything else, check if you've already left your like and if your subscription is active, because that really makes a difference and ensures you keep receiving all the updates about Manchester City. That way, you don't miss any important news about signings, departures, injuries, and behind-the-scenes stories at the club. It's quick, it's simple, and it helps a lot the work of those who follow everything closely to bring information to you. Now let's get straight to the point, because it's a heavy day for those who follow Manchester City. The latest information indicates a concrete move involving Antoine Semeno, and this time it's not just a repeated rumor. After weeks of talks, adjustments, discreet negotiations, and a lot of care from all parties, we reach what usually separates mere speculation from a real transfer, the medical booked. When a player reaches this stage, it's a sign that practically everything else has been aligned behind the scenes. The Bournemouth forward had been monitored for quite some time. On the pitch, the way he was being used began to attract attention. Managed minutes, being preserved in certain moments, substitutions that seemed more strategic than technical. Anyone who follows the market knows this kind of handling is rarely by chance. When a club starts to treat a player as an asset in transition, it's because negotiations are at an advanced stage. With Semeno, the feeling was exactly that, and now the information confirms it. There is a set date for the medical examinations linked to his move to Manchester City. This deal did not appear out of nowhere. There were already reports of an understanding between the two clubs regarding how to settle the release clause in the region of £65 million. Bournemouth, publicly, kept to the standard line, stating that nothing was done. Internally, however, the scenario seems quite different. What largely remains is bureaucracy, signing documents and completing formal steps. On the players' side, everything has progressed naturally. Personal terms agreed, a long-term deal at the Etihad, and a weekly wage already aligned at figures close to what had been reported by the English press. The expectation is that the medical will take place right after Bournemouth's match against Tottenham. Everything indicates that this clash should represent the forward's farewell in the shirt of his current club, closing a spell that took on bigger proportions precisely because of City's interest. The manager Andoni Iraola, in recent interviews, did not hide that the situation was surrounded by noise. He did not deny it. He did not try to firmly shut the rumors down. He allowed it to show that a departure is likely, almost inevitable, when things behind the scenes are moving in that direction. If everything goes normally in the medicals, the rest of the process tends to be quick. Manchester City's schedule is intense, and Pep Guardiola wants more attacking options. The idea is to have Semeno available as soon as possible, including the possibility of featuring already in the upcoming domestic cup matches. His versatility, ability to attack space, and physical strength caught the attention of the club's technical staff, who see in him a player ready to adapt to different roles across the front line. For the supporter, it is the materialization of a move that seemed to drag on, but which finally takes definitive shape. The general feeling is one of relief mixed with anticipation. It was many weeks hearing that there was interest, that talks were taking place but without the final step. Now, with the medical booked, the transfer leaves the field of rumor and enters the final stage. The question becomes a different one. How will he fit into the team alongside names who are already established in the squad? This kind of debate is what excites the fan. When the conversation leaves the will he come phase and turns into how is he going to play, it's because the saga is practically resolved. While this is happening in the attacking sector, the defensive picture is living a completely different moment, marked by concern. The match against Chelsea laid bare problems that had been managed, but not solved. The draw with a goal at the end weighed on the table and also on the atmosphere. Beyond the result itself, the most striking episode was the injury to Joško Gvardiol. The Croatian left the pitch in pain, and subsequent tests confirmed a fracture of the tibia, requiring surgery and a prolonged spell on the sidelines. It is not something simple. It is the kind of absence that forces a club to act. The direct consequence of this is clear. Manchester City need to strengthen their defensive line. It is not just a question of having a large squad, but of maintaining high-level competitiveness in several competitions at the same time. With Ruben Dias also dealing with physical issues, the warning turned into a concrete need in the market. It is in this context that the name of Marc Guhei from Crystal Palace emerges strongly, a center-back established in the Premier League with broad experience and a profile that fits the demands of a club that likes to build from the back with security and personality. His contract is approaching the end of the season, which naturally reduces Crystal Palace's bargaining power. That opens up a real window for a deal below the player's maximum potential value, something that interests Manchester City. Rivals are watching, such as Liverpool, but the latest reports point to City as the main candidate at the moment, including initial talks already having taken place. It is no exaggeration to say that a signing like this could have an impact comparable in strategic importance to what happened when Erling Haaland arrived, not because of the position or style, but because of the weight it can have on the campaign. Guhei is a defender with a strong presence in one-on-one situations, good reading of the game, aerial ability, and quality in building from the back, attributes that fit the manager's philosophy. On top of that, he knows the pace and demands of the Premier League as a regular starter for quite some time. That removes the need for a long adaptation period that some players coming from other leagues have to face. In a moment of urgency for reinforcement, that detail carries a lot of weight. He is someone who could come in and contribute immediately, keeping the competitive standard high even with important absences. The title race does not allow much margin for error. Every point dropped increases the pressure. Strengthening the squad in a targeted, surgical, and swift way becomes an obligation for anyone who wants to keep fighting at the top. That is why Guhei is treated internally as a priority target. The supporters sense this and are already beginning to imagine partnerships, fits, and possible formations. It is the kind of signing that is not just to plug a gap, but to raise the overall level of the defensive sector at a decisive stage of the season. At the same time as engineering this move, Manchester City are looking at another fundamental area of the pitch, the midfield. And here another important name emerges, linked to a long-term scenario. This is the English midfielder Elliot Anderson, currently at Nottingham Forest. It is not simply an isolated piece of speculation. For some time now, the player has been constantly observed by the club's analysis department, with positive reports and close monitoring every match day. He combines characteristics that greatly please the coaching staff: intensity without the ball, tactical awareness, late runs into the box, and the capacity to develop even further in a high-level environment. Forest know they have a valuable asset. For that reason, the initial asking price is above £100 million. It is a high figure, which naturally puts off less financially structured suitors. But even so, Manchester City's interest remains strong. There is another decisive factor in this story: the player's own desire. Reports indicate that Anderson sees Manchester City as his preferred destination and has a clear wish to work under Pep Guardiola. When that happens, the scenario changes. Personal motivation carries weight, puts pressure on the selling club, and gives the potential buyer room to negotiate more calmly. There is competition. Other big English clubs are watching and making inquiries. However, the fact that the player has put City as his first choice creates a differential. In addition, the club's planning cycle is geared towards 2026, and Anderson appears in that projection as a central piece in a gradual renewal of the department. It is not a signing only for now, but to structure the midfield for the near future. If he performs well with the England national team in a major tournament, the fee may rise even further, which explains the urgency to push negotiations forward before that happens. This combination of factors places Manchester City in a hectic moment in the market. A forward close to being made official, a center-back treated as the top priority, and a midfielder seen as a long-term investment. All of this happens while the team try to remain alive in all competitions and deal with significant injuries. It is precisely in these scenarios that the strength of a sporting project is assessed. Signing well, acting quickly, and thinking about the short and long term at the same time is what separates ordinary clubs from those who are always competing for trophies. The fans are watching all of this with high expectations. Seeing a player like Semeno so close to arriving, following the push for Guhei and knowing there is declared interest from Anderson in wearing the Manchester City shirt creates a sense of constant movement. Nothing is standing still. Nothing is complacent. The club keeps moving in the market, adjusting the squad and reinforcing weak points without losing sight of the future. It is this dynamism that keeps the team competitive season after season. This whole scenario also reveals something else important: how every decision in the market is connected to what happens on the pitch. Nothing is isolated. The possible arrival of Antoine Semeno is not just an attacking whim, but a direct response to the squad's needs, the fixture congestion and the style of play that demands forwards who press, attack depth, and manage to create imbalances even when the opposition sit deep. He offers exactly that kind of resource, something that can ease the load on other players who have been featuring almost non-stop throughout the season. At the same time, the pursuit of Guhei ties in with an uncomfortable reality for the supporter. The defense, which has always been one of the team's pillars, now suffers with absences and inconsistency. The prolonged absence of Josko Gvardiol represents an impact not only on a technical level, but also emotionally, because he quickly became a trusted figure. The injury changes the squad's dynamics. It forces adjustments, improvisations, and formation tests. Bringing in a ready-made center-back, used to the league and with the personality to take on responsibility from the very first minute, is a way of stabilizing an entire sector. In midfield, the interest in Elliot Anderson shows how far ahead the club think. It is an attempt to avoid sharp drops in level when certain cycles come to an end. Many key players are already at different stages of their careers and, naturally, the club need to prepare successors who can maintain the standard of intensity and tactical intelligence. Anderson emerges as this bridge profile between present and future, someone who can arrive, learn in the dressing room, and gradually take on a leading role. All of this also helps explain why Manchester City tend to remain at the top for so long. It is not just about spending, but about spending with intention, about mapping the squad and identifying where the gaps are before they turn into craters. The loss of Gvardiol accelerated the process at the back. The fixture congestion brought an attacking need. Planning for 2026 opened the debate in midfield. 3 different moves, but connected by the same logic, sustaining competitiveness without abrupt rupture. And there is one element that cannot be ignored in this entire context: the manager factor. The declared wish of players like Elliot Anderson to work with Pep Guardiola shows the weight the coach has in the choice of many footballers. For many of them, it's not just a contract. It's the chance to evolve, to learn new concepts, to maximize their careers. That creates a huge competitive advantage in the market. When the player wants to join the club, the whole process becomes more flexible, even with selling clubs trying to resist. Coming back to the Semeno case, the tactical fit is also striking. He can play wide, centrally, attacking space in transitions or acting as a mobile reference. In a team that changes systems and constantly demands versatility, that is gold. He does not depend on a single setup. He can be useful in different structures and game moments. That explains Manchester City's persistent interest, even with Bournemouth initially playing hardball over fees and payment terms. When the club identify this kind of profile, they tend to persist until the end. Likewise, Guhei brings characteristics that complement what already exists in the squad. Strong defensive reading, good timing in the air, and composure to play out from the back without simply clearing the ball. In a team that naturally exposes itself by attacking with many players, having defenders capable of dealing with large spaces in behind is essential. It is that kind of center-back that allows the midfield and the attack to play with freedom. That is why a defensive reinforcement is not merely to cover a hole, but to provide a foundation for the entire playing style. The central point is that everything is connected. Attack strengthened, defense stabilized, midfield planned. This builds a balanced squad with quality cover in every position, prepared for the marathon of the Premier League, domestic cups, and European competitions. It is the constant attempt to avoid sharp drops in performance when injuries, suspensions, or dips in form appear. The supporter can sense when the club are active, alert, anticipating problems instead of simply reacting too late. And of course, along with all the market movement, comes the expectations in the stands and on social media. The anxiety for Semeno's official confirmation, the curiosity about Guhei's next steps, and the ongoing saga around Elliot Anderson feed the fans day to day. It is the period in which every small update becomes a topic. Each negotiation detail gains weight. Every word from an executive or the manager is analyzed under a magnifying glass. It is part of the game off the pitch, just as intense as what happens inside the four lines. What is clear is that Manchester City do not intend to passively watch the season unfold. The idea is to act, reinforce, correct, and evolve. The team want to keep competing at the top, close the gap to the leaders, and arrive strong in the final stretch of the competitions. To do that, they need a deep squad and players ready to decide games. Semeno can help in the attacking sector, Guhei can stabilize the defense, and Anderson appears as an investment for a dominant midfield in the coming years. The puzzle is being assembled piece by piece. With all this laid out, the supporter can see a common thread between the stories. They are not isolated tales, they are moves that complete one another. Gvardiol's injury drives the pursuit of a center-back. The fixture congestion and the need for rotation justify Semeno's arrival. The planning for the club's future opens space for a name like Elliot Anderson. Each situation feeds into the other, and the result is a Manchester City who are active, aggressive, and strategic in the transfer market. Now it is a matter of waiting for the official outcomes, the confirmations, the unveiling photos, and, of course, the moment these players step onto the pitch. That is where everything is truly proven. A transfer becomes reality when the player pulls on the shirt, steps on the grass, and shows why he was signed. Until then, what exists is expectation, analysis, and a lot of conversation among supporters trying to project what lies ahead. If you've made it this far, don't forget to show your support. Leave a like, activate your subscription, and share this with those who also follow Manchester City. That helps to keep bringing more content, more information, and more analysis about our club. Your participation matters, so make sure you're subscribed with notifications on so you don't miss the next updates. Want more parts and more details? Just say so in the comments.